How do you choose a phone for your kids, for your tween, for your teenager, and maybe even for yourself? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. I'm going to give you my 5 top smartphone alternatives. You might call them the best dumb phones out there, or alternative approaches or stair-step approaches to you, your family, your kids, and their devices, and what you want to accomplish. And so before I get into my top 5 and how that looks for you, I want to give you a couple of things to remember and remind you of that are in line with the goals and principles of this course, because our goal is to how do we raise kids who have a healthy use of technology, have a better vision for what it is for, and leads to flourishing and peace of mind and more time and less distraction, all of those things. Remember, that's the goal. So how do we pick a phone accordingly? And that's what we're going to talk about in this video. The first thing to remember as we think about what phone is best for your kids or your family is a reminder at the beginning that doing what everyone else is doing is not working. So just because everyone else has a smartphone for their kids, even if they're under 10 or 8 years old or 12 years old or whatever that is, that approach is not working. As we've already made the case, the statistics are compelling. They're not flourishing. They're lonely. They're anxious. They're depressed. They're not getting enough sleep. They're exposed to inappropriate material. There's unsafe things they can run into online, as well as constant distraction and lack of focus and clarity and all those things that we've already talked about. So this part is just the pep talk to remember that you were doing a good thing by trying to live counterculturally as a family, because what's normal for everyone else right now is not working. So you don't just want to give your kids a phone, an iPhone or an Android phone or a Google phone, and just say, here you go. And because we want to get a hold of them and we want to be able to track them or whatever your reasoning is, you don't just want to hand them a device and let other kids' families dictate what you do in your family, okay? So you and your family are in charge, and it's okay to be a little abnormal in that sense, because your child is the one that's going to be healthier. They're going to have a better sense of self, a better sense of identity, be less distracted, and have more sleep, and have less exposure to all those harmful nudges from a worldview perspective or even a body image perspective or whatever else is out there that we're trying to protect them from as they grow and mature, to be able to handle that and say no to those things at the appropriate time. So that's just the pep talk as we dive in. So how should we think about this decision about what phone is best for your kids and for your family? The first thing to think of is this: any plan is better than no plan. Meaning, and I'm not talking about phone plans, I'm talking about the plan for your phone and for your kids. So if you have no plan whatsoever and you're just handing your kid a device, that's a recipe for disaster, and that's not what we want. So first, let me commend you that you're even thinking about doing something different, because the more of us as parents that do that, the bigger the change will happen and the more transformation we'll see, and then other families will have the courage to make some of these choices which are better for their kids and their families. So any plan is better than no plan at all. So good job on that. The second thing you need to think about is this: a phone is a tool, so you want to ask, what is it for? Meaning, what is this doing for your child, your family? What are your goals? Everything is not a good answer to that question, because part of the reason we are in the mess we're in is because phones now do everything for us, so we're never apart from them, and our kids learn that and become addicted to it at a very young age, and then they follow that same pattern and that same trap. So we don't want our phones to do everything for you. Again, we talked about how can I make certain things easier and more difficult? Well, that happens to be a very important question when it comes to our phones, because what we want to do is train our kids to have a healthier view, empower them to navigate their technology as they grow into adults with confidence. So as you think about this question and the different kinds of options for phones and devices that are out there, the question that you need to ask and answer as mom and dad is simply this: what is this doing for us? I want to be able to call them. They need to be able to send me a text message, Are we trying to track them? Are we trying to always know where they're at every last second of the day? Is it for an emergency? Is it for them to be able to take pictures? What is this for? What problem is this solving for our kids? Because again, everything is not a good answer, because that is how big tech in many ways gets you, because we get addicted and used to doing all of these things on our devices, from alarm clocks to paying for everything with our phones to directions to everything else, and then we're never apart from our devices, and then it's really hard to be in charge of your technology at that point. Another thing to consider is that what you train them with now in the devices that you get for them, they will expect later. So one of the things that you need to think about is you are training them how to view technology. So many of these companies are marketing these devices for kids, saying this is your kid's best first device at like age 5. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe that's not the answer, even if it is a little safer in some ways, because you're training your child to know that they've always got a watch or a device or a smart piece of technology on them at all times. And one day they're going to grow up and be just like mom and dad who have that device. And again, all of that and how you choose those devices that you give your kids are shaping them and their expectations for what they're going to have later. And one of those things that you want to think about is it good to always have your technology always with you? And that's something that you need to think through as a family. Another very important question to consider when you're buying a phone and looking at what your kids need in a device is simply this: how much do you, as the parent, want to be involved in daily decisions on phone use? Okay, so do you always want to be approving apps for your 9-year-old? Do you always want to be adding screen time limits, if you're adding those things at all, for your 10-year-old or 14-year-old or 16-year-old? What is it that you are trying to do each day around your kids' devices? Now, as we've already talked about, having a plan is better than having no plan. But here's what I want to encourage you to do. Some of these different phone companies have developed tools that require a lot of parental involvement in order to monitor and set these things daily. Now, of course, we want to be engaged daily in the sense of with our kids and our family and what's going on. But the point that I'm trying to make is, if you are setting yourself up for unrealistic expectations of how many times you are going to be able to approve or deny something throughout a day, and eventually it just makes you throw in the towel and not monitor anything at all, that needs to play a factor in which phone or which device you give to your kids. Because the worst thing you can do is just allow this to wear you down, and then you just take all restrictions off, all parameters off, all the boundaries off, and just give them the phone anyway, because it wasn't the right device at the right time. And even with the best of intentions, you now are too busy to monitor all the things that you wanted to monitor. So that's an important thing to consider as you think about what phone to give your kids. Another thing to consider when you think about which device to give your kids is simply this, and this is just a reminder that, hey, surveillance capitalism and the attention economy are a thing. They are real. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Surveillance capitalism means all of the phones have tracking devices on them. What I mean by that is almost every phone on the market has some sort of tracking or cookies enabled or GPS location or things you agree to that is tracking all of your behavior, all of your kids' behavior, the contacts, the information, and it's mapping that on a customer so they can sell to you later or sell to your kid's profile later. So again, some of these phones are still tracking those things, even if you have some limits in place. So you need to think about that. There are some phones that don't do that, and those are things that I'm going to share with you in terms of what you might want to consider. And so that's important. So that's surveillance capitalism, because they're trying to make money off of you, the product, right? And so that's important for us to remember. And our kids are the product. And so we want to be careful in terms of how we sell their information, their user experience, their data, so that it follows them later on. And remember, every social media company and every tech device ultimately wants you as a customer, which means they're going to try to get your attention. And that's how they make money. That's the attention economy. The more time that they have your eyeballs on that device, on that phone, on that watch, the more money they're able to make. They're able to monetize it. They're able to track you. They're able to associate ads with you. They're able to associate patterns with you. Okay? So again, anything you have location tracking wise or any of those devices installed on your phone, any of those apps, most of them are tracking and selling your data, your information, your location, all of that. And so you need to be aware of that. Surveillance capitalism and attention economy are real, especially on even some of these kids' phones that you're looking into. So you need to make sure that you're thinking that through as a mom or a dad when you're considering what to buy. Your kids need your voice more than the internet's, more than the influencers, more than the algorithms. They need you to step in and guide them through their digital universe. And so how do you do that? I've created a resource at refreshroadmap.com that helps you navigate and have conversations. And I've created a 5 conversations every parent must have about screens guide. It's free to help you feel confident about what to say, what to do, where to start, and why it matters. If you go to refreshroadmap.com, you can download a free guide. You can click on the link below in the description of this YouTube video. But here's the thing. Refreshroadmap.com will help you navigate these conversations with your kids, and you'll know where to start, what to say. I literally give you a script. I give you the words to say, why you need to say them that way, and encouragement and some coaching on what to do and how to do it. Because look, I get it. We're busy and we can feel overwhelmed. We don't know what to say. We want to do something. We love our kids. We want what's best for them. We know these dangers are out there and we must do something. So how do you do it? Start at refreshroadmap.com. It's a free PDF guide I've created for you. You can start those conversations today. Now we can go a lot deeper, and I do this in other places with my Refresh Roadmap course. You go to refreshroadmap.com, start feeling confident about these conversations where I share what to say, what to do, where to start, and why it matters. So now with all of those caveats, with all those principles and questions in place, and since you're trying to have an intentional way of going about this as a parent, which I commend you for, what is the best option out there? Okay. So I'm actually going to start with what my number one is, because I want you to see how this can change things for you and your family. But I'm also going to show you other alternatives with varying degrees of options and controls and everything else. Okay. So my favorite device, my favorite phone for you to consider, especially for a first phone for your kids, is simply this. It's called the Wise Phone. And they're making a new one, and I love their marketing. It's a beautiful, boring phone, and it really is. It's through techless.com, and you can go and you can notice what it has available to you. It has a clock, a calculator, a camera, maps, music that you download to it, a notes app, photos, and settings, and that's it. Now, it doesn't have an app store. There is no social media. You can text your child. You can call your child. It's a beautiful device. It won't look strange or weird. People won't make fun of them for this. But it's a great phone to minimize the time that your child is on this device. So this would be a great device to maybe have around the house in case you need to leave your kid at home and they need to call you if you're not there, or if you need to send them with this device so they can call you maybe when practice is done or they're at their friend's house. But you don't need to worry about them searching. There's no internet browser. There's no anything else. There's just simply a phone, a camera, notes, an alarm, calculator, things like that, and maps if that's needed. And then that's what it does. And then you solve other problems with other devices or with other parenting techniques or principles. Okay. So that's the idea. So the Wise Phone is a great option for you as a family. The Wise Phone 2 is a great option because it does the essential functions you want it to do for a phone, but nothing more. So it's not going to invite your kids or your teens or your tweens into it more than is needed to do whatever the function is that is needed. So I'm a big fan of the Wise Phone 2. In fact, I've got a link down below that's going to give you $25 off in order to this phone, because I think it's a great option for you. I'm a big fan of what they're doing at Techless and the Wise Phone 2 because it's just a simple, well-designed, beautifully elegant, dumb phone for you to use. And so this is a great training phone for you to give your son or daughter as they go even through the early high school years. Maybe if you're waiting until your junior year to be able to give them other devices, or maybe not at all, because you might find that they love this so much, they don't have all the other issues that you're having with other social media and everything else. But I do love that this phone limits the amount of time your kids are going to be engaged in online, but you'll still be able to get a hold of them. They can still text a friend. They can still call someone if they need to. And it's a beautiful phone, and I think this could be a great option for you. Now, again, it doesn't have an internet browser. It does not have the App Store. That is all by design. Now, the win for you as a mom or dad is because you don't have to monitor, approve app requests, or anything else. You just know they've got a safe phone that will only do certain things, and that is it. And that's great. It's also helpful for you as a busy parent, and it's also helpful for younger children that you might want to have an option for them to be able to call you or communicate with you as needed or as they're heading into the high school years or something like that. So Wise Phone 2 is a great option. Another option for you to consider is what's called the Light Phone or the Light Phone 3. There's a Light Phone 2. There's different versions of this phone. In many ways, it's similar to what the Wise Phone 2 is doing, but it's a smaller device and it doesn't look like a traditional smartphone like a Wise Phone 2 does. This is just simply a device that has a phone. It's an alarm. It does directions. You can download some music to it, has notes, calendar, some essential functions for you because you're trying to approach things differently. So again, this might be a good option for you and your kids or your family, depending upon what you're trying to accomplish. And so the Light Phone 2 or 3 can be very effective for many of the same reasons that I talked about with the Wise Phone 2. I just like the Wise Phone 2 better because of its design and some of the functions that it has as well. And so I think both of those are good options for you, but you're going to have to remember that what this is doing for you primarily is it's taking certain things out of play. Internet searching, App Store, social media, Spotify and Apple Music are not going to be on this device, so you don't have to worry about explicit music. YouTube is not on here, things like that. No TikTok, no Snapchat, none of that stuff is going to be on here. And so that takes certain things out of play. And as a parent, you don't have to monitor those things because the phone simply won't do them. It only does certain functions really, really well. Now, a different kind of device is a Gab phone, which has kind of wearable tech, what you might think of in terms of like an Apple Watch, but it also has different levels of phones for different aged kids that either completely lock down the device or it has the App Store or different things that are attached to it, or it has different apps and different things that you can allow at different stages. Now, again, this could be a good alternative for you and your kids and your family, depending upon what age they are and what you want your technology to do for them and what you want to train them to expect from their technology. But it is going to take more involvement from you as mom or dad than the previous two phones that we talked about, because you're going to have to set some things up. You're going to have to monitor them in different ways. You're going to have to be involved in all of these different layers of protections and limits and boundaries and permissions and all of those kinds of things. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something you need to be aware of as you consider this, because again, if the goal is to limit the access your kids have to various things, but because of time, busyness, you kind of give up on your plan and just kind of unlock the whole thing for them anyway, it doesn't really help solve the problem you're trying to solve. So the Gab phone could be a very helpful tool for you and your family as you think through the different options that they have. And so I think it's a helpful phone and certainly a better alternative to classic smartphones by themselves. And that's something for you to consider as well. Another phone that you might want to consider as a family is the Bark phone. Now, this is a Samsung phone. It's a Android device that's designed by Bark, so it has its own software and everything built in natively to the phone. It's not going to stand out. People won't think it's a weird kiddie phone or anything like that, but it's going to be customizable all the way up, and it will monitor text messages. It'll monitor social media and monitoring. It'll do different things along the way, but it's a whole different way of viewing a phone for a kid because you're going to have to be involved in all of that. Again, all the monitoring, all the different things. There's a lot of really cool things that are built into it, but it's also going to take time and more money in different ways for you to monitor some of these things. But it could be a very good option for you, perhaps for an older kid in high school or a teen or a tween or something like that, where you are actively involved and customizing what they get. Maybe they can't delete the text message. Maybe they can't open these apps. There's different things you can turn on and off. And in another video, I share with you a couple of tools that you can download on smartphones as well that do some of these kinds of things if you want to go that route and use screen time limits and all those kind of things just natively on an iPhone or natively on an Android device. But the Bark phone could be a good alternative for you and your family. But any of these things, as long as you're intentional and know what you're trying to solve, that could be a really good thing. So the Bark phone could be a great option for you. Again, they're changing all the time in terms of what they have available and accessible and everything else. And so that's something for you to think about in terms of the Bark phone. So you've got the Wise phone 2, which is my top choice because I think it simplifies the whole process. You've got the Light phone, you've got the Gab phone, you got the Bark phone. And then some parents like to opt for some sort of Apple Watch or wearable tech, which allows calls maybe and some monitoring and a few notifications. But I think one of the things that you want to think about here is what you want this device to do for them. Now, full disclosure, I am not a big Apple Watch fan. I'm not a big wearable tech fan because of the monitoring, kind of the, attention economy. It's always on your wrist. It's always buzzing. There's notifications that are always there. It's always with you. It's always tracking things. It's always measuring things. So I'm not a big fan of that in general, but sometimes parents have found this to be a helpful way to communicate with their child without giving them a full-fledged phone. The goal is you want to turn everything off on this watch except the essential things that you want it to do for you. Maybe send and receive a message or send and receive a phone call, but definitely don't download all the apps and everything else involved because then you're going to defeat the purpose. It'll be distracting and everything else. So again, the surveillance capitalism and the attention economy are very real, especially when it comes to Apple phones, Apple devices, as well as Apple Watches and Android devices for that matter. So that's just something you want to factor in about how you do that because you're going to have to navigate the App Store, family time, screen limits, all those settings you're going to have to figure out to make sure that Apple Watch or whatever device they have on their wrist is doing what you want it to do and nothing more. What you don't want to do is just give them unbridled access to an Apple Watch and think that you've helped set them up for success because they're still going to be distracted. They can still access things on it depending upon if there's a plan or wireless around or whatever it might be. So that's something to think about as well. So at the end of the day, which is the best phone or device for your family? Well, let me get back to this question. What problem is this device solving for your kids and for your family? At what age and what stage? Because it may be that you just need to simply communicate with them and text or give them a call, or they need to be able to call you in the case of an emergency. But you don't want them to have access to all the app store and social media and everything else, internet, YouTube, TikTok, any of those things. Well, then that's one pathway. Or maybe it's a stair-step method that gets you all the way through different ages. What it might be for an 8th grader to have something versus a 10th grader versus someone who's going into their senior year. And you want to help give them more freedom with more encouragement and accountability in the ways we've talked about in other videos in this course. And so I want to encourage you to maybe think through what problem is this solving for your kids and family. Don't just get them a device that does everything, solves everything, and that you're not monitoring and you're not intentionally engaged with, because that will defeat the purpose, okay? But there's some good options out there, and I'm grateful that companies are finally trying to solve some of these problems for families who want to dial down the screen time, the screen addiction, and all the unhealthy things that come with it. But the last thing that I want to do is encourage you and maybe challenge you to consider as mom or dad is simply this. Maybe one of these devices could serve as a weekend phone for you. What would it look like for you to have a Wise Phone 2, for example, as your weekend phone? So maybe during the week you have to be accessible because of your job, but maybe you're able to dial down how much time you're on your device on the weekend and even give yourself 4 to 6 hours back of uninterrupted time. But you can make a call or a text if you need to, and that's it, right? And you can kind of unplug and create a different rhythm. A lot of people have started doing this. Again, we have all sorts of subscriptions to various things, maybe even that we don't need, but how much is your time and your focus, attention on your family worth to you? If it's hard for you to say no to work on the weekends, maybe consider, you know what? I'm going to get an extra phone so I can use that so I can be more fully present with my family. And then I'll use my regular phone Monday through Friday. Maybe that's an option. Maybe that's something to consider. The bottom line is there are finally some good alternatives for those of us who want to pull away and get more focused time and set our kids up for success and train them how to use technology and not just hand them a device that's going to have them addicted within 20 minutes to all these things they don't need and is not good for them. Okay? So I commend you for taking the time to think through what is the best device for your child and consider some of these alternatives of what it would look like to set up a countercultural or a new normal for your family from the beginning where they look at devices and technology differently because of the principles and rhythms that you've put into place. So I'd love to hear what you decide and why. So make sure you reach out and let me know kind of what was working for you and your family. I'd love to hear more about that. But the bottom line is simply this. Any plan is better than no plan, and intentional use is better than just complete passive acceptance of whatever your device is doing to you. So best of luck as you figure out what is the best tool for your family, for your kid, at what age.